from there before I pour water on you.
Party scatter. Why yo?
Pass the front. Pass the front.
Madam, you must pay your dues today.
Echo Bridge approach, we create the blockade here. Alpha team secures the target, Beta team watches the rear. Let's move.
Shadows of chaos. I wake up on a thin mat spread over a cracked cement floor, my small body sticky from heat, mosquitoes humming around me like an unending curse. The air is heavy, thick with the smell of smoke, sweat and sewage from the clogged gutter outside. There are no toys, no nursery rhymes, just the sound of quarrels echoing through the corridor. My playground is the narrow passage, wet from spilled bath water, littered with broken buckets and cooking coal. Sometimes, I toddles barefoot through puddles dark with dirt, giggling, too young to understand that those same waters carry diseases. When we fall ill, my mother fans us through sleepless nights, whispering prayers in a language cracked by exhaustion. The power goes out again. The room becomes a furnace, a growl of generators and the sharp cries of children crying. Outside, adults argue about politics and broken government promises. At preteen, my innocence had long been stripped from me, peeled away by years of hardship, hunger and hopelessness. The same narrow corridor that once echoed with my childish laughter had become a breeding ground for vice, delinquencies and despair. I had learned too early that dreams don't feed empty stomachs, and hunger doesn't wait for opportunity. I watched my mother age before her time, her back bent from hawking, her eyes tired from counting debts. The nights were filled with shouts, men gambling, women fighting, the clink of bottles breaking against walls. At first I tried to stay away, covering my ears with a pillow as the smell of weed and cheap gin drifted through the compound. But hunger has a voice louder than conscience. When the street boys offered me something small to help me forget my troubles, I didn't say no. Soon I was part of them, running errands for petty thieves, learning how to pick pockets, learning the art of survival through deceit. My school uniform turned ragged, my books untouched. The streets became my classroom and the older boys my teachers. Each night I came home smelling of smoke and sin, my mother's tears soaking her wrapper as she prayed for the boy she used to know. By 16 my eyes had lost their shine. Poverty had reshaped me, from a curious child into a cold, restless shadow of what I could have been. In my suburb, dreams don't die suddenly. They wither quietly, choked by the fumes of hardship and the laughter of those who have already given up. My descent into darkness wasn't sudden, it was slow, quiet and merciless, like a wound that never healed. The boy who once ran barefoot through the corridors had now become one with the shadows that lurked there. It began with cigarettes, passed from hand to trembling hand behind the public toilet. Then came weed, a green escape from the hunger, the noise, the shame. Each puff blurred reality a little more, until I stopped caring about what tomorrow held. When the drugs no longer numbed my ache, the streets offered me something else, a new kind of belonging. The older boys called themselves the brothers, but they were street soldiers of survival. They took me in, fed me, clothed me, and gave me a purpose twisted by poverty, take what the world won't give me. At first it was petty theft, snatching handbags in traffic, breaking into shops at night. Fear became a thrill. The sound of sirens became a song. Then I crossed a line I could never return from. I joined the gangs that prowled the highways, robbing cars at gunpoint. The drugs made me fearless or numb. I stopped hearing the cries of my victims. They became echoes lost in smoke and adrenaline. My mother, once the anchor of my soul, no longer recognized the hollow eyes that stared back at her. She begged, she wept, she prayed, but the streets had already claimed me. Kidnapping came next, easy money, they said. Quick, clean, no guilt if you didn't look your victims in the eye. I told myself it was just business, but the screams haunted my sleep. The money I made never lasted, all of it spent on drugs to silence the guilt, on false laughter, on fleeting pleasure that always ended in emptiness. By the time I was 20, my name was whispered in fear. The boy who once dreamed of wearing a suit had become a ghost in tattered jeans, hunted by police, hated by neighbors, and forgotten by God, or so I thought. My hands trembled from the drugs, my heart hollow from the things I had done. Then my last operation. The robbery that finally led me to jail began like every other night, desperate, reckless, and drenched in false confidence. The air was thick with harmattan dust, and the smell of burnt fuel as I and my gang crouched behind an abandoned container near mile 2, whispering plans under my breath. We had heard of a businessman who drove through that route every Friday night, always in a black Prado, always alone. To us, he was not a man, he was a payday. I was high as usual, a mix of tramadol and weed pulsing through my veins. My heart beat fast but steady, trained by too many nights of crime. When the headlights appeared in the distance, my body tensed like a predator. I stepped out into the road, guns raised, faces covered with rags. The driver slammed on his brakes, panic flashing in his eyes. In that moment, time slowed, shouts, curses, the metallic click of a safety pin. I yanked the door open and dragged the man out, shouting for him to lie down. The man begged, trembling, clutching a Bible to his chest. Then a sound shattered the night. A gunshot, not ours. Someone had called the police. In seconds, chaos erupted. The gang scattered, bullets flying through the air. I ran through the alleys, breath ragged, shoes slipping on gravel. But the drugs dulled my instincts. I tripped, fell, and felt the cold mouth of a rifle pressed against my neck. When they dragged me into the police van, blood trickled down my face. In the harsh glare of the station lights, the weight of my choices finally landed. The guns, the greed, the lost innocence, all of it led to this cage. I hadn't escaped poverty. I had become its weapon. My mother came, tears tracing rivers down her wrinkled cheeks, the smell of sweat and regret filling my lungs. My first night in prison felt like stepping into the belly of a beast, dark, foul, and alive with suffering. Days bled into nights, each one marked by hunger, violence, disease, and endless despair. The cell was small, no larger than a kiosk, yet packed with 60 men, bodies pressed together, the air heavy with the smell of sweat, urine, and despair. The walls were damp and flacking, and the single barred window was too high for light to enter. When the iron door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoed like a verdict on my soul. Sleep never came. Rats scurried across the floor. By morning I learned the routine: beatings for silence, starvation for obedience, and humiliation as part of survival. Food came in rusted tins, watery beans crawling with weevils. The water was brown, the toilets broken. Illness spread like whispers. The toilet in the cell was a horror of its own. The bowl was cracked, and the stench that rose from it was unbearable, a heavy, sour odor that clung to the air and to the men themselves. Maggots squirmed in the stagnant pool at its base, and flies buzzed endlessly, feeding on decay. At night, when the guards locked the doors, the toilet overflowed, its contents seeping slowly across the cracked floor, forcing men to sleep with their knees pulled to their chests to avoid the filth. Each breath near it burned the throat. In that corner, where dignity went to die, even the strongest souls learned what true helplessness smelled like. Once I collapsed during roll call, my head hitting the floor with a dull thud. Life and death looked the same in that place. For 3 days, I drifted in and out of consciousness. After 5 long, agonizing years, a miracle happened. A human rights lawyer, tipped off about wrongful detentions in the prison, uncovered discrepancies in my case. My name had been confused with another, evidence misplaced, and the robbery charge exaggerated by corrupt reports. One morning, the warden called my name. The iron bars no longer loomed before me. When I stepped into the sunlight, the world felt impossibly bright, almost unreal, as if freedom itself were a gift I had never dared to dream of. I walked away, scarred, humbled, but alive, carrying the weight of the streets, the prison, and the lessons of survival etched deep into my soul. On my release, I worked as an apprentice at a mechanic workshop and lived responsibly afterward. If you like my video, please subscribe, like, comment, and share. Thank you.